Hey everybody, it's Delta Shiny Zeta here, and today I'm going to be covering a very special video because we are going to be looking at the game Psycho Killer. It's a 2 to 6 player game and it's very horror themed. It actually fits really well with, this time of the year, meaning October when Halloween is coming up. So I decided it's time to go ahead and showcase this game. It actually came out about a year or so ago, so it's been a little while, but it's been getting a lot more hype this year, so I did want to cover it here on the channel today. But right off the bat, you can easily see that it's very heavily inspired by the horror theme genre, things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, especially when you see things like this chainsaw right there. Yeah, very inspired. It's also VHS-like, the box at least, so you can see it's kind of like those classic horror movies, they wanted to theme it like that, of course. Overall, it's a very interesting game, so that's why I do want to go ahead and showcase this game to see if maybe it is the right fit for you. Also, the game is going for about $25 to $30 on Amazon, so it's about a fairly average price compared to other tabletop games. That's about the price I was seeing the last time I was on there. So if you do like this video and you like this game, be sure to try to buy one yourself because it is actually very in the theme, like I said. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at it a little closer. So it's 2 to 6 players, 15 to 25 minutes to play on average, usually a little bit longer if it's your first time playing this game, especially if a lot of people are playing the game when it's their first time because they need to kind of know the rules a little bit. And it says, can you survive? So on the closer look, that's how it looks in the front and back. Like I said before, shaped like a VHS, which is a little interesting. Anyway, upon opening the box, you will see a couple things. The very first thing is, of course, going to be the rule book. So the rule book looks kind of like this. It may be a little lengthy, but there are a lot of images, which is great. And the nice thing about watching a YouTube video, though, is that you do not need this at all. So I can just go ahead and toss it because I'm going to be demonstrating to all of you about how to play this game. Alright, so there are going to be plenty of cards, and that's basically the entire thing of this game. It's just a rule book and cards. The very first thing you'll notice when you're looking at this video and my cards is that they may actually initially seem like a lot more cards than when you are actually opening the box for yourself. That's actually because I have already went ahead and used card sleeves. You can actually tell. I can go ahead and do that, and you can easily tell that there are card sleeves. Card sleeves are great. I go ahead and sleeve up most of my cards whenever I actually have enough card sleeves. I'm going to go ahead and move this over because we don't need that anymore. And in order to actually play the game, there is a slight setup, not too crazy, but what you actually want to do is go ahead and separate all the black cards. All the black cards include all the Psycho Killer cards, as well as a couple other nice little event cards that are also black. The way that you can tell is just look at the background. I'm not talking about the image or the actual line. Any card that's black in the background, such as this Psycho Killer card, such as this It's Behind You card, you want to separate them. So I'm going to go ahead and separate all of these cards right now. Okay, once you go ahead and separate them, what you will notice is that 5 of all of these black cards are going to be Psycho Killers. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The rest of them are going to be like little event cards in a way, but they're all black. And what you want to do is separate them because now what you want to go ahead and do is shuffle all of these cards. I'm going to be shuffling all of these extensively. Once you shuffle all of these cards, what you want to go ahead and do is deal out 7 cards to each player. So, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to be going ahead and putting 3 different play areas here, but in normal circumstances, more than likely the players are going to be facing each other, so one could be here, one could be way over here, and one could be over here, all facing each other in the table. So I'm going to go ahead and deal 7. Once every player has received 7 cards, and as you can see I'm doing a 3-player demonstration, what you want to do after that is go ahead and shuffle all of these black cards into the remainder of the deck. The reason why is because the black cards are going to be part of the game and they need to be shuffled in the deck because we will be drawing them, but they cannot be in players' starting hands, which is why these are actually separated in the beginning. Alright, so I went ahead and shuffled all of the black cards in there. As a very last resort, just go ahead and have one player cut the deck, that way we can ensure a little bit of fairness. And there we go. What you should be doing is that this entire draw pile should actually be around the middle of the table so that everybody has easy reach. There should also be space available for a face-up discard pile. And also, each player should actually have a little bit of space right in front of them because that's going to be their injury pile. Yes, people are going to be getting injured in this game, not physically, but in gameplay terms you will, because there's a lot of weapons from the Psycho Killer. And that overall is the setup of the game. The goal of the game, in order to be the winner, is to actually have the least amount of points at the end of the game. Yes, you heard me correct. The least amount of points, meaning the lowest score. So what exactly makes you score higher, which equals bad? Well, if you take a look at all of the cards, you're going to see a lot of different types of cards. This here is a sample hand for one particular player. This over here is another sample hand for the second player. And then this over here is the third sample hand for the third player. You're going to see a huge variety of cards. You'll see green cards, purple cards, orange cards, and there's also red cards and even the black cards that were shuffled in there. As a little heads up, each player is going to be looking at the cards but not revealing them at all. They're going to just keep them to themselves. I'm revealing all of these to all of you because this is a tutorial video on how to actually play it. Before I explain how the game works though, the easiest way to tell all of you in case you are familiar with this game is that it's very similar to Exploding Kittens, meaning that during your turn, you can play as many cards as you want, but then you always have to end your turn by drawing the top card of the deck and placing it into your hand. If you draw any regular cards, such as this card, then you can go ahead and actually keep it into your hand. Your turn is over and play proceeds clockwise. However, I'm going to go and put the card back in here because what you essentially want to do is you want to avoid Psycho Killers. As I mentioned before, in this entire deck, there are 5 Psycho Killers somewhere here shuffled in here. The big rule is that if you draw a Psycho Killer, you immediately have to reveal it and you play it face up in your zone, and that's your injury pile. Let me go ahead and pull out a Psycho Killer just so I can actually show you how this works. So for example, if this player were to end his turn and this thing was at the very top, they draw the card and they will actually reveal that it is a Psycho Killer. What this means is that you can see a +3 down here. So if they were to draw the card, they have to play it in front of them and they automatically already have 3 points. And again, getting points in this game is bad. Higher scores are bad. This basically means that the Psycho Killer ended up hurting you or wounding you, and now you've taken damage and you're hurt. So now your score is higher, which is bad. However, the other key thing is that immediately when the Psycho Killer is played, all players, meaning not just the player here in the middle in this case, but all players have to look at their hand, and all weapon cards, meaning all of the red ones, such as this baseball bat, must be played face up in front of them. So for example, this player here only has 1 weapon card. You can easily identify a weapon card by looking at the color. It's a red card. Weapon cards are red. So because the Psycho Killer was actually played, go ahead and get this baseball bat and play it in front of you for this particular player. That's their injury pile. So now this player actually has +2 points. This one has +3 points. Now let's take a look at this one. They have no weapon cards, meaning no red cards at all. So this player is actually safe. What does this mean? This means that a primary goal of this game is to try to get rid of weapon cards in your hand. The more weapon cards you have, the worse your hand is. Because if somebody plays a Psycho Killer, you're going to have to play all your weapon cards face up and get a really high score, which is bad for you. Let's go ahead and backtrack though. Let's go ahead and put this right up here, and we're still going to assume that the Psycho Killer is actually at the top over here, even though again, in regular circumstances, you wouldn't actually know this. But to actually go ahead and go with what the main goal of the game is, you want to take a look at your cards. You will immediately see that all cards in this game outside of weapon cards such as this one have an effect. Weapon cards are the only cards that do not have any effect. So for example, this card is Drop Your Keys. It says give another player 2 cards from your hand. Remember that when it's your turn, you get to play as many cards as possible. When you play a card, just simply place it face up in the discard pile, which should be next to the draw pile, which is right here, and then proceed to use the effect. So if I were to play this card, Drop Your Keys, I would basically call it out and say, I'm going to play Drop Your Keys. And it says give another player 2 cards from your hand. So I go ahead and place it there. I choose 2 cards from your hand, let's say these 2, and I give them to another player. However, in this case, that would probably be a bad thing. In case you're wondering, why would you want to give cards from your hand to another player? Isn't that bad? If you give these cards, yes. However, the reason why this card exists is, remember, there are weapon cards. What if you had 2 weapon cards in your hand? you can play this card, get rid of 2 weapon cards in your hand, give them to another player, and that way you're a lot less susceptible to being attacked by a Psycho Killer. So in other words, it would not be smart to play this card because all cards in here actually do something and they're pretty good to have. Let's go ahead and look at this card here. This one says Disarm. Shuffle up to 3 cards from your hand back into the deck. It's a pretty similar effect, but it's 3 cards and these go back into the deck and shuffle the deck. So it's a little bit different than Drop Your Keys, but you kind of get the point. And that's basically the main premise of the game. You go ahead and play as many cards as possible, try to get rid of weapon cards, try to get other good effect cards while trying to avoid Psycho Killers. But there is one more thing I want to go ahead and show you. If you remember, there were actually other black cards in the deck, such as this one here. Again, all Psycho Killers are black cards, but not all black cards are Psycho Killers. Let's assume this card was actually at the top of the deck. The rule with black cards, including Psycho Killers, is that when you draw them, you must play them immediately. So if this card was at the top and I ended my turn, this one says a graveyard at midnight. This card says draw the next 3 cards. Black cards have a special rule in that if you draw them, you must play them immediately and put them in the discard pile. Again, the exception is a Psycho Killer. The Psycho Killer, you place it in front of your pile because it hurt you. But this one is a black card that's not a Psycho Killer, which means you would play it, resolve the effect, which means you draw the next 3 cards. 2, 3, you drew a Psycho Killer, you have to go ahead and place it face up in front of you, and now all other players have to go ahead and discard their weapon cards. Really bad luck, you got a Psycho Killer and a baseball bat within these draws, so this card really screwed you up. Sometimes black cards are good for you, sometimes bad for you. So that means you gotta play this one. I believe this player had another bat as well, which I already showcased, and then this player was safe, they didn't have any weapon cards. But that's a good demonstration right there. However, the one exception to black cards is that if you do draw a black card when you have 10 or more points face up in front of you, you can actually keep the black card in your hand instead of forcing to play it immediately. This is done to create a nice little balance of the game, because when you're more behind in the game and closer to losing, thus having a higher score, it at least balances out by you being able to keep black cards and able to use them when you want to, instead during your turn. So for example, if I had 10 points here, let's say I had 2 Psycho Killers and maybe about 4 points worth of weapons, that's 10 points. What does that mean? This means that if I were to end my turn and draw this, because I have 10 points or higher, I can actually choose to keep this card in my hand instead, or I can play it immediately upon drawing it. It's my choice. But again, you can only use this if you have a score of 10 or higher. If you have 9 or lower, you are actually going to be forced to always play the black card immediately. Having a score of 10 or higher is actually called left for dead. It means that you are left for dead because you are very close to being dead since you have taken a lot of damage. The very last thing I want to go in and talk to all of you about, let me go ahead and place this card back there, is that there's actually some special effects of certain cards, and you can see this by looking at the symbol. As you can see, this right here is a fast forward symbol. There's other cards that have other symbols, and you can actually take a look at the rule book to see the 5 different types. There's eject, stop, rewind, play, and fast forward. If you have a card that has any one of these symbols, which you will always be able to tell what they are by these very iconic VHS-like symbols, it means that the card has a special property. Sometimes it can be used outside of a regular turn or in any other situation, depending on what the card is. Let's go ahead and take a look at these one at a time. The eject one says, the eject symbol indicates that you must play the card immediately after drawing it. There are some exceptions to this if you are left for dead. So, any cards that have an eject symbol, such as this black card, will go ahead and show you right there that you must play the card immediately unless you're left for dead, which I literally just explained. So a lot of these symbols are pretty straightforward if you know the rulings, but they actually do help you out by clarifying if you do see a symbol. So if you were to draw this and saw the eject, you know that you must play the card immediately unless you're left for dead, meaning if you have 10 points or higher, which means I have to place it here. However, you also see a fast forward button. What does that mean? When you play a card with a fast forward symbol, complete the action on the card, then end your turn without drawing from the deck. Now with black cards, it's a little interesting because obviously you're drawing the card because your turn is over, and you see the eject, so you're forced to play it, and then your turn is over, right? I mean, you already knew that. But the reason why it has a fast forward icon is because if you are left for dead and you keep the card in your hand and you choose to play it in a future turn, let's say my next turn, I'm looking at my cards and I'm like, I want to play this card because I'm left for dead. Let's say I had 10 points here, 10 or more. I can play it, but guess what? Because it's fast forward, it means that my turn ends immediately without drawing a card. Think of it like as in your turn is being rushed. You know, that's kind of how I see these symbols. If it's fast forward, you're playing it, and that's it. Using the effect, that's it. You're not drawing, that's it. It's going fast, it's fast forwarding your turn. You can also see this fast forward icon in a couple other cards here. For example, this dead end card that I keep showing says reverse the direction of play. Which means that if you were to choose this card, yeah, you can play it and reverse the direction, meaning instead of going left, like in most tabletop games, how play proceeds to the left, you play it, play proceeds to the right now, but your turn is over without drawing a card. Why? Because it's a fast forward symbol. The next effect is stop. Stop says cards with a stop symbol can never be in your hand even when you're left for dead. If I'm being perfectly honest, the only card in the game that has the stop symbol is the Psycho Killer. The stop means that you must always play the card immediately even if you are left for dead. So the Psycho Killer is the exception if you have 10 points or higher. You must play it. It also has an eject button, which means that again, you basically have to play it immediately. It has both, but that's just over clarification just in case you were a little confused. The fourth one is actually rewind. Rewind says cards with a rewind symbol can be played immediately after you draw from the deck. As a good example, here's a slam the door card, and as you can see, there's a rewind symbol on there. Rewind, as it says, it's going backwards, it's rewinding, and it makes sense thematically because if you activate a rewind card when you draw a card, it's like you're taking it back. So this slam the door card, as an example, says, put the card you've just drawn back on top of the deck and draw the next card instead. This is interesting because the one exception when it comes to Psycho Killers or black cards is that if you draw them, in normal circumstances you would have to play it immediately, but you do have an option of immediately playing a rewind card to save yourself. So what you can do if you were to draw this by ending your turn, you can be like, actually I play slam the door. I get to put the card that I've just drawn back on top of the deck and draw the next card instead. So I'm going to play this in the discard pile, right over there, put this card back on top of the deck and take the next card instead. And then play this one, which would be this black card that I keep showing here. So then you go ahead and play the card because again, it's an eject. Unless you're left for dead, you can then keep it in your hand. The very last of 5 effects is the play. The play says you can play cards with the play symbol when it isn't your turn. It's actually pretty obvious as well. For example, this card right here is actually Barricade. It has a play symbol. Think of play as, hey, I can play this whenever I want. That's how I think of it. Barricade says, play during an attack to avoid playing your weapon cards. As you can see, it's pretty obvious, even if this thing didn't have a symbol, it would be pretty obvious to most people that you can play this outside of your turn. Because if somebody were to go ahead and have a Psycho Killer and they play it, you can play this immediately even though it's not your turn because somebody else drew the Psycho Killer. So you can play it and you don't have to discard your weapon cards because that's what Barricade does. Overall, that's the game though. The game actually ends when all 5 Psycho Killers have actually been played, and people will keep drawing at the end of the turn until all 5 Psycho Killers are played face up. Once they're all played face up, the game is over, everybody tallies up their score, highest number loses in that order, which means lowest score is the winner. However, if 2 or more players have the same score, then the player with the least amount of Psycho Killers is actually going to be the winner. And if both players are still tied after that, then the player with the least amount of weapons in their injury pile is the winner. If the game is still tied after that, then to be honest, you can just call it a draw. As a quick little heads up, there actually is a drinking version of this game known as Bloody Mary, but it's still a Psycho Killer game. You do need the base game in order to play this, which means you can't just buy this and play the game. You need the base game, which is all this. And then there's an expansion of it. If you do want me to go and make a video, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know, because I will actually go ahead and do one of these if you are interested. Other than that though, that's actually it for this video. As always, I do encourage you to go and leave a like, comment, subscribe, and turn on those notifications if you enjoyed the video. I will see you all later. Bye bye everyone. Have a great day.